Hi, my name is Hannah Jane Pritchett, current U of A GIST Master's student and UA GIST podcast host, along with Chris Lukenbiel. Welcome to the University of Arizona GIST podcast. Today, we will be chatting with Jennifer Psillas, MSGIST alum, who currently works in the City of Tucson Parks and Rec Department. Let's get started.
I'm the director of the UA GIST programs, and on today's podcast, we're excited to have Jen Psillas from the City of Tucson's Parks and Rec Department. Jen's been a long-term, 2-decade in the geospatial industries in Arizona, a huge player in Southern Arizona with the co-op and also with AGIC coming up. Has done a lot of work with them. There's a great example, as you'll soon see, about why networks are important. But I'm excited to talk about some of the parks and recs and natural resources background that you have with the City of Tucson, Pima, and Marana. But first, I want to introduce my co-host, Hannah Jane.
Hey. Hello. Thank you so much for being here, Jen. Let's just jump right in. I was wondering if you could talk a little about your GIS training and background and how you got into the field.
Sure. So I came to Tucson in 1998 to go to the university for geology. And my first summer, I came in January of 98. And that first summer I was taking a class. A friend in the class said, he was a geography major, the geology minor, and said, "Hey, I'm taking this GIS class. I think you might like it." And I said, "What's GIS?" And so the next semester I signed up for Dr. Yule's intro GIS class, and hook, line, and sinker, I was done. That was it. I still kept the geology degree, but I added on geography as a second degree at that point. So I really love geology, and I miss science sometimes, but GIS was, I took to it like a fish in water. It just clicked for me. And unlike geology, I knew I could get a job in this also. So that was another thing that kept me going. After I finished my undergrads in 2001, I went straight into a watershed management master's at the U of A. But before I finished, I actually got a job with the town of Marana as a GIS tech. And so that first master's got kind of put on hold for several years as I was trying to negotiate working and trying to finish the degree at the same time. And I was at the town of Marana for 3 years. And did kind of a jack of all trades thing that you do when you're a technician. We need to digitize all of the water meters in the town. Go for it. We need to, move all this data to this thing. Please do that. And so I was working with all the different departments doing whatever was necessary, and printing maps for purchase, because back in that time, people were buying the maps to put on their walls. After the town of Marana, I went to Pima County Natural Resources, Parks and Recreation, where that kind of tied a little bit closer into my background in natural resources with the watershed management and things like that. So I really enjoyed that. And again, it was kind of jack of all trades type of thing, where there's, you've got the natural resources side, but you also have the parks and rec. So you have, where are all of our playgrounds and things like that. And so I was there for just shy of 8 years. But while I was at Pima County, this guy came down from ASU and sent out an email saying, "Hey, we're starting starting a master's program at the U of A for GIS." And I emailed him immediately saying, "Tell me more." So I jumped on that first, the inaugural class. Which class is that, Chris? The best class? Yeah.
Best class from 2011.
Exactly. So I jumped on that right away and did my master's in GIS, and I got to do, again, another watershed-based and natural resource-based project for my final project. Fast forward, I have now finished that other watershed management master's too, and I am now at the city in the Parks and Rec department, where I'm the only GIS person in the department. There's a central group in IT, and I coordinate with them, but I'm the only one in my department doing what I do. So that's a smattering of like my professional life and education there.
It's interesting, and I should say all of the GIST classes are wonderful groups.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. But the unique thing about the inaugural class at the UA was that most of you are working professionals in the industry in Arizona. And so it was like this pent-up need of something that was required. And I know Jen will just absolutely hate me for this, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Oh, no.
Yeah. If I go back and look at the grid, I can't believe it how many people out of the 2011 class I still speak with and know personally in the industry. Matt Barabys with the city. I just got off the 3 Zooms with Casey, who's working with the Sierra Club on mapping the border wall. Marion's with Fairfax County in Virginia, doing archaeology and GIS. Amani's still doing GIS. Eric's with the county, and on and on and on. And you know that, I mean, you recognize the faces too, I'm sure. And I have to throw in there, because you do know the story, that you were not guinea pigs, and now we're like the best ever GIST program in the history of humankind.
Absolutely. So. Yeah, well, and you're right. There was a lot of us who were already working in GIS that when this program came along, we just jumped on it. Because while having the skills working in the field is obviously, you know, you need those, but also having that credential sometimes opens some doors that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get through.
Yeah, and I remember when we started too, and I thought like one of the philosophies I brought, and I thought it really worked here, was like a learning community, that it wasn't just like you just needed a cheerleader, which became me and you, by the way. You served as an adjunct for like 5 years and helped. But like community learning is so important. And so it wasn't just the faculty of getting, you know, the fun group that we, you know, had together, but also getting like Peter Johnson out of the city, getting SNRE, having Stuart Marsh and Wim Van Leeuwen from the Remote Sensing Center, and Gary Christofferson from Geography. Like getting those community people together with all of you, and then like whatever, and learning together, just staying up late in the evenings, burning the candle at 2 ends, and like just doing some new GIS. I think that's what really rocks, because those original groups are now the people that do interns for the current groups. And it kind of keeps building, and the cycle keeps growing. Even with the online students, we have online students hooking up with alumni all over the US now, which is kind of really fun to see. How many of the 2011 group, or do you remember, that you still communicate with, like in terms of work, kind of off and on fairly regularly?
So
I saw Tanya at the AJ conference. She's up in Flagstaff doing archaeology GIS. But you do a lot with the co-op too, quite a few of them here in town.
Right. So Eric Glenn at the county, Trevor, I see him a bunch too, Trevor Self, through the co-op. Since COVID happened, we haven't been having our meetings. So, but there's always this group of people who attend the co-op, and that you have your little network that you can always like shoot an email. Like Ken Mates is somebody who was not an alumni of the program, but he knows everything having to do with flood control. So whenever I have a question about some data, or, you know, can you tell me what this, you know, memes, so find something in data and I don't know what I'm looking at, he's my go-to guy. Over the years, particularly also being in the Tucson area for all of my jobs, I've had the opportunity to meet a bunch of people I would not have otherwise known, also through the GIST program. People that were in that program, there was a couple faces that I knew, but by the end of that year, they're my best buds now, and I can call them up whenever I have a question. And I think that's really valuable to have that networking capability kind of built into the program, into your job, because we don't know it all. GIS is very broad. I have one particular niche that I'm in. I always joke with Johanna Kraus. When she starts speaking about database stuff, I don't know what she's talking about most of the time, because she just has a completely different role in GIS than what I do. And so I tell her I'm just like, everything you just said doesn't make any sense to me. She's like, yeah, well, I don't know what you do. So, it's a trade-off. But being able to ask those questions, Esri's help docs are always actually very helpful, but sometimes you need somebody to like explain it to you. So Tanya up in Flagstaff, I have messaged, oh my gosh, I can't say it, messaged her and said, eek, pro problems, can you help? And she like explained to me what I was doing wrong, and that one-on-one help from a person is sometimes very, very valuable.
So as we've done these podcasts, we've heard from many people how important networking is, as you've kind of just explained. So I was wondering, what advice would you give current or incoming students on how to build, how to build their network, from like just kind of starting out?
Well, so I'm not very good at it myself sometimes. I've gotten better over time. I am inherently an introvert, and I think a lot of people who get into the technologies also tend to lean towards the introversion side of things. And so you have to practice. Just like giving a presentation in front of a group or like any other skill, it's a skill to pick up. So I try to, when I'm at the conferences, say, hi, I'm Jen, I'm from the city of Tucson, and just chat with people about stuff, ask them what they're doing. And, again, like once we get back into, normal again, where we can meet in person, you start seeing faces that look familiar and say, I haven't actually met you, and just make the connection. And then if something comes up that this person would be a good person to ask them, send them an email. GIS people are always willing to help with stuff. We've needed help, therefore we are happy to give help, and just kind of put yourself out there a little bit. It's like I said, it's kind of a skill that you need to practice. Some people are much more at ease with it, but this is a little tidbit. So what I do is, like, if I'm at a conference and I meet somebody and I get their card, I will write on the back like what subject matter or what we talked about or something like that, so that if I am looking for something, I have like kind of a note of, oh, this person knows all about trails, for instance, or something like that. And because as much as we'd like to think that we can remember everything, we don't. And then also the listservs that exist through the co-op, through AGIC, being able to just throw a question out there, the community will respond. And again, you'll start recognizing some names. And, I met Mark Cristiano from the Kaibab National Forest. I had seen his name popping up all over the place. Finally got to meet him in person what was I up at ASU for? Oh, I think it was the mapping the Grand Canyon thing. And it was like, oh, it's so nice to meet you. Now I know what you look like, you know. So yeah, I guess the summary of that whole thing was put yourself out there, make some connections, talk to people, see what they do.
So you've kind of found a unique niche in GIS, and I've had many students interested in parks and recreation, like within a city. Like maybe you could tell people, like, what does a GIS analyst do with related to Parks and Rec? Like, what does your daily work life look like?
Sure. And yeah, it's kind of funny because over time, this niche kind of developed. It wasn't something that I intended. Like, I didn't pointedly go for working in Parks and Rec, but it ends up being a really good match for me. At the town of Marana, I worked with the Parks department to do whatever mapping they needed, and actually the last thing I finished up before I left there was a parks map. And at Pima County, because it had the natural resources in there also, there was kind of more of a mix between natural resources and just the urban parks, the urban side. But here at the city, it's all urban stuff. It's all playgrounds and swing sets and ball fields and stuff like that. So what I really do a lot of is asset management. What's out there? How long has it been out there? Does it need to be replaced? And so I use GIS, and we also have Cartograph, which is an asset management system. And Cartograph and Esri talk to each other. So anything I do in GIS will show up in Cartograph and vice versa. So a lot of it lately, and we just implemented Cartograph last year. So we started off with 10 different layers, athletic fields, playgrounds, play equipment, buildings, fences, landscape areas, benches, and then all the other amenities like drinking fountains and garbage cans and dog stations, things like that. So it's an ongoing process of inventorying, double checking, finding out when stuff gets removed, keeping the system up to date, making any changes that are requested on the maintenance side. So it's really data heavy. Then that's mostly on the maintenance side. Then I do have another slightly more analytical part with our capital planning group. The head of our capital planning group, our deputy director, Greg Jackson, asks really good questions. And he pretty much so gets GIS. Like, some people around here don't know exactly what it is that I'm doing, but Greg kind of gets it. And so he asks really good questions. And so one of the projects that we're kind of ramping up on is a data-driven land acquisition project. So if we have funding to be able to purchase land, where would be the biggest bang for our buck as it goes to put a new park? So, we want a park in a location that will serve the most people, that will serve underserved areas. So something that's far enough away from existing parks that it will get a new group of people. We can look at all the demographics of age. We want definitely, under 18, but then also we want the older segment of the population too, because it's a nice thing to be able to just walk to your neighborhood park, maybe take a lap, and then you're, back home. And if it's close to you, then, and if you feel safe doing so, then you're serving another population there. So we're kind of going through what are the factors that are going to be going into this. Like I said, the demographics, what already exists around it, how far away from an existing park should it be? a whole mess of things. So that, and I tell Greg all the time, I'm like, you ask really good questions. Thank you, because then you get to flex those analytical muscles a little bit. A lot of what I do on the maintenance side is, like I said, data driven stuff that's technician level. I kind of, since I'm the only person in the department, I kind of do it all. So I'm doing data maintenance, basic functions, but then also on the other hand, through the capital planning, then we can start thinking about things, planning ahead, doing some analysis. And that's always nice to have kind of a nice smattering of stuff. It's really nice on like a Friday afternoon, if nothing else is going around and I need to digitize some stuff, I put on some music and I am just happy as a pig in slop, just to sit there and digitize. But it's really nice to also use that brain a little bit more, doing some higher analysis functions too.
So do you think there are some new skills that you think that are important to learn based on where GIS is headed?
Yes, and this kind of, my caveat on this is it kind of depends what you're doing. So me in a department, the skills that I need to develop are going to be different than somebody who's in IT doing scripting and things like that. One thing that I can say, like outside of the technical skills, everybody who's in GIS needs to have, and it might be just kind of an inherent part of your personality, a curiosity and an attention to detail. It's really easy to take for granted if somebody sends you some data to just take it and start running with it. You need to look at it, you need to understand it, you need to ask questions if you don't think you're quite getting the whole picture. So I'm always like, you need to have this attention to detail and be curious. Like if you run an analysis tool and you get a result, does that make sense? Does it look like what you were expecting? If it doesn't, why not? Did you make a mistake? Are you not understanding the tool? What could it be? So those like kind of GIS type things, I think are very important. Outside of GIS, and this is something that I am trying to develop myself, is project management skills. So my title is GIS Project Manager. Do I manage projects like a traditional project manager? No, because I have all these other things that I'm doing also. But the first little clue in project management is it doesn't have to be a big thing to be a project. And so getting basically all of your project ducks in a row. So, I can't tell you how many times I thought I understood what somebody wanted, and I go off and I do this thing and say, hey, look at this, isn't this awesome? And they're like, oh, that's not what I thought we were doing or whatever. And so like clearly establishing what's needed, why you're needing this, all those parts that are part of project management is something that you're going to be doing anyway. And so I'm kind of working on kind of formalizing those skills. I think it's something that will help me going forward, because I am, over time, you are responsible for bigger and bigger things as you're going forward. And so I think for me, that's my little, wisdom from your elders thing that I'm telling everybody is like, look into project management stuff. You don't have to get certified, if you don't want to. You may love it, you may hate it, but it's all very helpful and can cut out a lot of miscommunication. And then also, like tagged into that is the communication part. A lot of people don't understand what it is that we're doing. And so keeping people abreast of what's going on, where what you're doing, how you're doing it, showing them little updates and stuff like that is also very important, because the more we kind of disappear and do our thing and then come back, they're not going to understand that black box of what it is that you're doing. So keep them, up to date on what aspect you're working on at the moment, or any questions you may have, just so it's still in the front of their minds, and they also can then start to understand what it is that you're doing.
So I guess I'm also wondering, how do you personally stay current on your skills?
It's hard. It is something that you have to constantly work on. So most often, well, okay, it was really easy in school to stay up to date. And it's also one of the reasons that I did the program, was because I was beginning to feel like a fossil. It had been a while since I had been in class. I knew things were changing. I was not keeping up on them on my own. So for me, it was easy to do a master's. Yeah. So it was easy for me to jump into that program. And I try to stay up to date by going to Esri as often as I can, seeing and sometimes you'll see something really cool at Esri, and then you come back and you look it up and see if there's any training, watch the video, whatever it may be. And a lot of it actually is like online, and a lot of free training through Esri. So those are really good things. And then that's also where kind of your network comes in, where if you can send it out there and say, hey, has anybody done this? Or has anybody played with this tool? And so people will respond to that and give you some helpful tips. Most often, if I'm trying to do something and it's not working, or I'm confused and it's just, I'm not getting anywhere, I will go to people I know and say, I'm trying to do this. What am I missing? And so, it is kind of tough to keep up with everything, but Esri is pretty good about, again, their documentation, the training that's available. I mean, if you're an Esri shop, if you're not an Esri shop, then you have to keep up with whatever software you're working with. And I think the way I learn best is to see a presentation on something, take an online class. I think that's kind of if I'm wanting to do it on my own. So like I had an arcade book. Oh, here it is. I had an arcade book, this one, on my desk for months now. Have I had an opportunity to sit down and work through the book? I have not, but I need to make a point of doing that because I'm from back in the day using VB for things, and a lot of my little silly scripts that I use don't work anymore. I've also pretty much transitioned all the way to Pro. I still have some things that are in ArcMap that I need to go back to sometimes, and I'm going to try to migrate those over to Pro. But for the most part, I had an update on my computer. So if anybody's trying to go from ArcMap to Pro, this is the way you need to do it, in my eyes. I had an update on my computer. All of my settings got wiped. At that moment, I said, okay, I'm only doing stuff in Pro. It was challenging. It was, you think that, okay, the logic of ArcMap, Arc Pro should function the same way. No, it does not. It just forget that notion. It's a completely different animal. And I just basically threw myself into it and floundered, and people would come to me and ask me for a map, which I could normally, if it's nothing special, they just need an aerial of something, I could usually shoot that out in seconds, literally. They thought I was brilliant. Well, now then they were all getting the caveat of, okay, I'm in a new software, so this might take me a few minutes and trying to figure out how to do stuff. But literally, I just had to go cold turkey. And now when I pop back over to map, it's foreign to me now. I have to remember how I used to do it. But that's a really big example of trying to keep up with stuff. I just had to just go for it and just start playing with it. And then that's where I call Tanya and say, I don't understand what I'm doing. How come I can't do a layout? Or whatever it may be. Yeah, I say just kind of go for it and, stay curious. If you see something at a presentation that looks interesting, look it up, play with it, see what you can do.
You learn a lot from your peers, and also just the nature of the GIS industry is keeping current. It's so difficult, but also so necessary. It's like you learn the base skills, but then the technology is always transforming and changing around us. Kind of on a slightly different subject, but I was curious on how your department and you yourself have been impacted by COVID issues related to the Parks and Rec department. I try to go to Reed Park, and half the benches are closed down, or the playgrounds, and it just got me thinking of, does that entail any part of your job as well?
So with so the city actually was very proactive on this whole thing, and we're all very thankful that they were. So in the middle of March, I can't remember exactly when it was, but they told us all to go home and work from home on that. I think it was Wednesday. And they wanted to see if we would break everything. Could the system handle everybody VPNing into their computers and stuff like that? And then the following Monday was the if you can work from home thing. So I have been spending the majority of my time at home, but sometimes it's just easier for me to come in to my office where I am right now, because I have the dual screen, I have the faster connections, and sometimes when I'm bopping between GIS and cartograph and a PDF or something on the web, it's just easier for me to do it here. So I'm luckily, I live really close to where my office is, so it's not a burden to drive back and forth as I need. But that being said, I'm one of the office workers. Our maintenance staff, they did change their schedule a little bit. Instead of having them on the schedule for 5 days a week, they went to 4, which meant a longer day, but they didn't have to be here as often. And they kind of changed things around so people were in smaller groups. On the rec side, all the people that work in our recreation centers and things like that, they and the pools, they obviously were no longer open, and so we had a large chunk of our staff whose job was not, they weren't able to do their job at that point. So what we did actually was I have needed to do a park inventory for basically since I got here. I inherited data that was about 4 years old at that point, and we did have one update from that, but at that point then it was probably pretty old, and also it was kind of a snapshot, so I wasn't necessarily getting notifications if something was removed or just moved in the park. So what we ended up doing was having all of our recreation staff go out to the parks and do a park inventory for me. So we started with the drinking fountains, and it was hard because I didn't know how long I was going to have them. We had no idea how long this was going to last, or how long the rec centers were going to be closed down. So I said, okay, we're going to go out and find all of the drinking fountains. So I made maps for everybody and gave them a little sheet that had a grid on it that said, this manufacturer, and it's got, a standard, an ADA, and a dog bowl on it or something, so they could take all the information about the attributes. I couldn't get them, because of permissions and stuff like that, I couldn't get them like on Survey 123 or anything. So we did it the old-fashioned way. I sent them out with maps and sheets, and they went out there and collected all this data. And then we had the ladies that work in class registration help me input that data. And it's been just wonderful to get all, good information. I might have known that there were 5 benches in this park, but I had no idea if they were concrete, if they were metal, is this one falling down, the whole thing. So it was really nice to be able to, number one, give opportunity for hours to our staff to be able to go and do that. And then number two, I ended up getting much better data into my system. The rec people also had, or basically the entire city, they opened up redeployment opportunities also. So for 6 months, like a couple of our front desk people are at Tucson Water now, and it's a 6-month stint. So people they made it easier for people to shuffle around to fill voids that were happening based on what COVID was now needing, because of COVID, what was now needing to be done. So we had some staff that teamed up with transportation and Suntran to go to the bus stops and sanitize and clean and things like that, since Suntran was still going out. So the city was really good about trying to keep as many people employed as possible and giving them opportunities to be able to get the hours that they needed.
What skills did you take from your program at U of A that are still very valuable and practical to you today that you use in your everyday job?
Well, because like I said before, I kind of do a little bit of everything. I don't really deal with scripting and programming and stuff like that very much, but I go from digitizing to analysis. So, everything that we learned in the GIST program was because I was already a working professional in GIS when I did the program. I had already seen most of that. But it was a reinforcement. It was an updated version. It was, type of thing. So I really do go from your basics. Although I must say, professionally, I have only worked in one projection. So I don't, and whenever I get data from, I got the CAP canal data one time, and it was not already in the projection. It was like, oh my gosh, look at this. I have to do something with this. Those skills that you don't use very often. You're like, oh, I remember this. But yeah, it's as GIS people, I think we are inherently kind of jack of all trades, jacks of all trades. There you go. You kind of dip into whatever skill it is that you need when you need it. And as far as school stuff goes, specifically, to get through the program, you have to be organized. And that was one thing when I turned around and after I finished the program, and then I turned right back around and started teaching for the program. That was one of the first things that I told people up front is you have to decide how you're going to file your stuff. You have to figure out some sort of organization, because with the different modules, with the different teachers, with the different semesters, it's going to become a mess really quick. And so, I have a way that I like to do things. I would, give them an example. Mine is not necessarily the best way or a way that makes sense to you. So whatever it is for you, but don't just have a folder that says GIST and dump everything into it. That's just total chaos. And I've seen that. And I can't live like that. It's you can't do that. So, yeah, organization is always a really good thing. I at Pima County, I had one of my coworkers that would come to me and say things like, so, that map with the green on it, can you print me another one of those? And so then you have to go into your head and into your files and be like, okay, if I'm this person, what does he mean by the map with the green on it? Sometimes I would get it, sometimes I wouldn't. But if you don't have some sort of logic to how you're storing things, you're never going to find what you need. And so when I came to this job, the person that had it before me, his filing system, I would sit here and go, why would you do that? And so trying to find things was really difficult. And he did kind of a hybrid by person, by subject thing, which was confusing to me. Because he knew what map Jane was wanting, but I don't know what that is, type of thing. So organization will always help you, whether it's school or work, and making it so that if you need to tell somebody where to go to get something, it's not super convoluted. It doesn't go down 13 levels. It just makes your life so much easier if you're organized.
What do you think is the biggest factor that has helped you succeed in your GIS career so far?
Part of it is enthusiasm. I like what I do. And I like who I'm working with, my coworkers and what we do. And, I'm always joking, like, if you work for a parks department and you're not having fun, you're doing something wrong. And so even though like asset management doesn't sound like it's very thrilling, and it's not, but it's absolutely necessary, I inherently like what I'm doing. And so I think like enthusiasm coupled with that curiosity again, coupled with like trying to make things better when you see an opportunity to like do something that would make it faster, more efficient, easier, whatever it may be. Again, because a lot of times people don't know what we can do. Piping up and like being an evangelist, being, somebody who says, hey, I see you're trying to do this. I think I have an idea how to make it easier. I think that goes a long way to getting in the good graces of your coworkers if you can help them do something, make it easier for them. And yeah, it's just so funny because like I kind of stumbled into GIS, but it ends up being like a really good fit for me. And when you get, because we all get like occasionally like, what am I doing? But it comes down to I inherently like what I'm doing. I like dealing with the data. I'm a bit of a geek. I will admit it freely. I like getting things right and clean, good data when you can. Accepting that the data will never be clean also is a very good skill to have, because it's always changing. It's always in a state of flux. It's never going to be perfect. But that doesn't mean you can't try. So, yeah, it's a really a privilege to find a niche and to work with a group of people that you really enjoy what you're doing. And I'm happy that I found that, because sometimes, especially when you start out, you just don't know what's going to happen. And coming to the city was a good move for me. I've enjoyed this setting, and I enjoy the fact that I can go out to the parks occasionally. I need to take photos of things. Oh, I need to verify that this bench is there. That gives me that's something that a lot of people don't get to do. When I was at Pima County, I was responsible for GPSing the new segments of the loop as they went in. So I would get my bike and strap the GPS to the back of my bike and ride all these things. Well, one of the guys downtown, he was working with me on the data, and he had never gone out to the field for anything like that. And I'm like, well, let's go. And so I was able to take him out to the loop and show him how I collect the data. But inherently, we got to go take a bike ride, which was like always fun. And he had never in like 11 years of working for the county been able to go out to one of the sites and see it and go take a bike ride. So I understand that like most people don't get to go play in a park, but I get lucky sometimes that I can do that.
Well, but you also work in a park too, which is lovely because we're right in Reed Park. So that's a joy to
Yeah.
cross the park to work. I mean, I can think, but I was thinking, and for those listening in, I think when we talk about asset management and data, especially for a city or county, that how key it is to just day-to-day operations as well as long-term planning. So it's like, yeah, I geolocated a park bench, but it's also the the management of the assets of short-term, long-term, how it's being used, and then getting the chance. And I've seen some of your analysis on planning for the future. You know, thinking of where the next park's going to be, what citizens are being serviced and which ones aren't, and how can we alleviate some of those inequalities. Mm-hmm. I know that you're kind of on the front lines of that too. So I kind of have one last question kind of to end with, but kind of looking forward in your seat at the City of Tucson Parks and Recs as a manager of GIS, like what do you see, the future looking like of GIS in parks, kind of maybe in general, and how it might impact you in the future?
I think it's only going to grow because there's just so many possibilities, especially when you're talking about equity issues, which we're all very aware of right now. The Trust for Public Land does a really fantastic analysis. Basically, they want everybody to be within a 10-minute walk, so about a half mile from a park. So they do a really fantastic analysis that shows for the city of Tucson and for the top most populous, 100 most populous cities in America, they have a park score. So like what types of amenities do you have out there? How much of your how much of your population is served by a park? And they create this layer that shows moderate, high, and very high park need. And that is like one of the basis layers that we're going to be using in our analysis for land acquisition. Does this parcel that we're possibly looking at fall into an area there where there's park need? I would love at some point to have like an analyst position, because there's a lot of work and it's just me. I like doing this. That's fine, but it would be so helpful if I had another person. But so I could do some more of those analyses. I just touch on the maintenance side of stuff. So the asset management stuff, yes, you're correct. It has a lot to do with the upkeep and maintenance of all of our things, but then also it has like budget implications. If I can show that, let's say a park bench has a lifespan of 20 years, if I can show that we're going to have to replace 100 benches in the next 2 years, okay, where's the funding for that? And so like having all this information available and to be able to track conditions on our assets and know what their lifespans are, that then will inform our budgeting process. If we know that we're planting all of these trees this year and they have a lifespan of 30 years, all right, well, somebody 30 years from now, because it's not going to be me, will be looking at the data saying, all right, we need to replace these trees, or whatever it may be. So even though what I'm doing here is very focused, it has very wide-ranging implications through budget, through access, through equity. And just, what we do here at the Parks and Rec Department, I mean, a lot of, like I said, we're a fun group. We do fun things, but it's also like one of those things that makes people want to move to an area. Outdoor recreation is huge. Like I said, we're urban parks for the most part, but having a green space near you is really important. To be able to get to those spots. And I'm always constantly amazed when I go out to a park I haven't been to yet. So we have 130 parks and I have not gotten to all of them yet. And I come across these little green spaces in the middle of the city that are just so lovely. And it's just so nice to be out there. It has impacts on everybody's health, on their well-being, on their stress levels. Just going for a walk across the park, if I need to go take a photo, I'm enjoying being out there, but I also know just going for a walk in a park is literally helping my health. So it's really nice to see the impact of what I do. Again, it might be small right here, but it has a lot more possibility. So the more you can roll GIS into what we do, I think the more the demand there's going to be for that type of thing. I'm working right now on trying to replace paper and PDF maps with an online map, so that people can do, like, I want to find a park with a basketball court and a softball field, and kind of do like a park finder type of thing. Get that information out to the public, get people out to the parks. Ultimately, we all win on that one.
Oh, that's great. It's a wonderful way to end. And I want to thank you for your time today.
Certainly.
Jennifer Psillas from the City of Tucson Parks and Recreation Department. And also thank you for your ongoing and lasting contributions to the UA-GIST programs and community. You've been, as some of you might know, the mom figure for the GIST group, and will continue to hold that mantles for as long as you wish to own it.
Excellent.
But we will be seeing you around the future water coolers of the co-ops, the AGICs, the ESRI conferences, and as well scattered even through some of the material still in the GIST program. So thanks again for joining us.
Excellent. Thanks. It was nice to talk to you guys.
Thank you so much.